And now let's talk about the India-China standoff. No, I'm not talking about the one at the border. This was a standoff during the G20 summit. It happened at a five-star hotel, the hotel where the Chinese delegation was staying. They were at the Taj Hotel in New Delhi. It played host to many elite delegates, like Brazil's President Lula da Silva. And Brazil, you know, is the next host of the G20. So important delegations stayed in this hotel. The Chinese delegation was at the same hotel. And they threw a lot of tantrums, so much so that their actions led to a tense face-off. Members of the Chinese delegation arrived on Thursday, and this was an advance team. The Chinese premier reached New Delhi a day later, that is on Friday. Now, Friday, of course, was the day before the summit was about to begin. So before the premier came, some of his team was already here. They were put through a security check, which is routine procedure. Everyone goes through this for their own safety. In this case, the hotel security team noticed some bags. Reports say they looked unusual. Their dimensions seemed off. But they were labeled as diplomatic baggage. Now, Indian security officials were also present. They too saw the bags and they let them go. This was as per protocol. A diplomatic bag, also known as a diplomatic pouch, is like a container. It is used by countries to send documents or messages, sometimes even some articles or things, and this diplomatic bag or pouch is protected under the Vienna Convention, no matter the urgency. No other country can open this bag. No other country is allowed to take a look inside. And Indian officials followed this rule. These unusual-looking Chinese bags were labeled diplomatic, so they were allowed inside. The Chinese officials took the bags to their rooms, and soon after that, the Indian side got a complaint. A hotel staffer saw one of these bags. This person had gone inside the room and came out worried. So a report was filed. This staff member filed a complaint. They said there was, quote-unquote, suspicious equipment inside the bags. And that's when the Indian officials swung into action. The security team approached the Chinese delegation. They knocked on the doors of their hotel room. This time, they asked for a closer look. They wanted to put the bags inside a scanner, a bit like the baggage scan that you see at airports. So the Indian officers wanted to scan the Chinese bags, and this is not against the rules. India follows the Vienna Convention, and the rule book is very clear about such situations. Let me show you something. The Protocol Handbook of the Ministry of External Affairs. What does it say about diplomatic bags? Such bags must have clear markings to begin with, and they should only have diplomatic documents or articles intended for official use. These bags cannot be opened under any circumstances. The rule book says that very clearly. They cannot be opened. But what about putting them through a scanner? That is perfectly okay. In fact, let me quote. Diplomatic bags to be transported as cargo or registered baggage shall be X-ray screened as per the security instructions in force. Such suspicious baggage shall not be transported until and unless the doubts are cleared to the satisfaction of the security staff. So that's all that the security officials wanted to do. Put the suspicious bag through a screening. China did not allow it. They put their foot down. They refused to allow any checks. And this led to a standoff. The Chinese delegation refused to cooperate, and Indian officials refused to budge. They said they want to check the bags, not open them, just scan them. And this drama went on for 12 hours. Ultimately, the Chinese side came up with a way to evade scrutiny. They dispatched these bags to the Chinese embassy. And here we must praise the Indian team. Despite the pressure from the Chinese side, they held their ground. They pushed China to be transparent. A three-member team stood outside the delegation's room. They remained outside for 12 hours. They left only when China decided to send the bags to the embassy. So what was China trying to hide in these bags? Why did they block the security check? Well, that remains a mystery. The suspicion is that the Chinese side had brought a jamming device or equipment used to communicate privately. In fact, the Chinese delegation was quite paranoid about this, about securing their communications. They even demanded a separate and private internet connection. This request was declined. What does this incident tell you? It is a glimpse into the psyche of the world's second largest economy and the people who rule it. That's China for you. Secretive, confrontational, and ready to kick up a fuss. Our next story comes from Japan. This country is known for many things: rich culture, technological innovation, even sushi. But if there's one thing it's not known for, it's gender equality. Japan is now trying to turn that around, and we'll tell you how. They're starting with political representation. Today, the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, announced a cabinet rejig. There were a lot of changes, but the most important one was this. The new cabinet features 5 women. This is the first time 5 women will be part of the cabinet since 2014. In all, there are 19 ministers in the cabinet, so technically, women now represent more than a quarter of the Japanese cabinet. It's on par with Italy's female ratio. But Japan still lags far behind other G7 members. The government had initially committed to 30% women representation by 2020. Soon they gave up on that goal. And now they want to meet the target by 2030. They plan to offer babysitters and create a fund to support female candidates. So this rejig by Prime Minister Kishida is a step towards it. Now, Japan's history is steeped in tradition. Men are looked at as breadwinners. Women are seen as caregivers, like in most traditional societies. These roles are deeply ingrained in the Japanese society. Children are taught these norms from an early age. So women often find themselves on the fringe of political power. And it shows in global reports. Like a report on gender parity by the World Economic Forum, it ranks Japan 125th out of 146 countries. And that's really low for a developed nation. On gender parity in politics, Japan ranks 138th, even behind China, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. And that's saying something. So this cabinet representation is a good step. It is Japan acknowledging that it needs more inclusive leadership. Of course, it's a move that deserves applause. But beyond that, what does it really change? Around 10% of Japan's lawmakers are female, so not many women join politics in the first place, and this creates a disparity to begin with. You need a wider pool of women lawmakers to select from. And for that, you will need more women to join politics, so that should be a priority. Basically, it should be a bottom-up approach and not necessarily a top-down one. Secondly, it's all about changing mindsets. Many nations have adopted a quota system to ensure that women are adequately represented, but to the Japanese, this quota system is often unfair.
Many people in Japan think of a quota system as unfair and biased and giving extraordinary privilege to women. No, but it's the other way around. The existing system gives too much privilege to men, and particularly men from political dynasties.
Thirdly, it is essential to ensure that these are not just symbolic gestures. Prime Minister Kishida may have appointed more women ministers. But what's the larger policy? Is this a temporary move ahead of snap elections? And while giving them a seat on the table is important, it is also important to ensure that voices are heard. It is important to make sure that they can contribute to real change. Let me give you the example of Rwanda. This is one of the poorest nations in the world we're talking about, nowhere near Japan in GDP, but 61% of lawmakers in the Rwandan parliament are women, 61%. And this reflects in their policies too. The policies support equal rights for men and women. Women are given equal opportunity. Rwanda's gender pay gap is 86 cents to $1, one of the lowest in the world. So representation matters only when it is backed by policy. It matters when it is not just a token gesture. Japan's decision to appoint more women in the cabinet is commendable. It's a step towards gender equality. It sends a message that progress is possible in the face of deep-rooted tradition. But this is the first step of a marathon. It is not the finish line. The real work has just begun. Japan has taken a step forward. It needs to stride ahead to dismantle stereotypes and provide equal opportunity. And now let's turn our attention to North Africa, where the scale of destruction is staggering. In Libya, catastrophic floods have killed at least 6,000 people. More than 10,000 are missing. In Morocco, a powerful earthquake has left about 3,000 people dead. Even more are injured. In both nations, devastated communities have waited days for help, but response from Libyan and Moroccan governments seems too little, too late. Aid and rescue efforts have been sluggish. And if you're wondering why that is, the answer is politics.
Two African countries, two entirely different disasters. But grief or anger is all the same. We're talking about Libya and Morocco, where the devastation has been staggering. On Friday last week, a rare earthquake of 6.8 magnitude struck Morocco. It's left over 2,900 people dead and thousands more injured. Meanwhile, in Libya last week, a powerful storm unleashed floodwaters and burst dams. Reports say at least 6,000 are dead, with over 5,000 in the eastern city of Derna alone. At least 10,000 are missing. For both countries, these are the biggest disasters in their modern history. Entire villages have been erased. Roads are littered with dead bodies. People are still trapped under rubble. People are digging survivors out of the debris and burying their dead, often with their bare hands. Some have waited days for help. Part of this delay can be blamed on destroyed infrastructure. In Morocco, remote mountainous regions were the worst hit. These are accessible only by narrow and winding roads, so rescue teams took hours, even days to reach. And in Libya, the floods were so bad in certain regions, rescue groups had difficulty reaching people. In the worst-hit Derna, communication lines were down for days. This further hampered efforts. But infrastructure damage can't take all the blame, when the biggest roadblocks were the governments themselves. Let's start with Morocco, where the government's efforts were perplexing. Right after the quake, international aid began pouring in. But the country accepted help from only four: Qatar, the UAE, Spain and the UK. The nations it deems friendly. And who are the unfriendly ones according to Morocco? Algeria, France, Germany, Italy, the US and so many others. Many of whom had assembled their teams and were on standby. But they never got the green light. Typically, organizations like the WHO and the UN are on the scene in disaster zones, but not here. Also, it isn't just about who Morocco accepted assistance from, but also when. The green light came 2 days after the disaster. Compare this with Turkey, which was hit by a deadly earthquake this year. Within hours, authorities appealed for international help. 90 countries enabled their rescue crews and saved hundreds of lives. Now the 72-hour golden period of saving lives has passed in Morocco. Thousands are dead, and people aren't just grieving, they are furious at being abandoned by the government. But at least it's a stable one. That's not the case for Libya. It's been torn apart by over a decade of conflict. Now the country has 2 rival governments, one in the capital Tripoli, another controlling the country's east. You may remember, floods are ripping through eastern Libya. Did the 2 governments come together to save their people? The answer is no. Tripoli's government says it dispatched rescue teams, but the eastern government denies this claim. There's another complication. Derna does not share good relations with either governments, so they have been apathetic towards the city. Thus, its long history of infrastructural neglect, which is why 2 aging dams broke due to floods. And while Morocco's quake took the country by surprise, the Libyan floods could have been predicted. They were caused by a storm that gradually approached the nation. Yet authorities didn't study the water levels or prepare an evacuation plan. And now their people are paying a heavy price for it.
And now let's take some break from our planet and talk about maybe our future planet. Scientists at NASA have made a new discovery. They think water could be present on the surface of another planet. This one is beyond our solar system. It's more than 100 light years away from the Earth, meaning it'll take 100 years for light to reach this planet from the Earth, and about 9 times the size of the Earth. Scientists say this is a massive planet. It could have an ocean. As you can imagine, this is rare. This planet is unlike anything else in our solar system. I don't know how to read celestial bodies, but I can predict your next question. Can this planet support life? Here's what we know so far.
K2-18b. No, this isn't the name of Elon Musk's next child. It's the name of a planet. A massive one. It's 8.6 times the size of the Earth. And it's not just any other planet, it's an exoplanet, meaning it's beyond our solar system. It's more than 100 light years from Earth, and it's unlike any in our solar system. Here's why. NASA used its James Webb Space Telescope to gaze at this planet. They've made an exciting discovery that hints at a possible water ocean on the planet. Scientists found methane and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This combination means the surface could be covered with an ocean. This isn't the first time this discovery's been made. In 2019, scientists used the Hubble Space Telescope. They spotted water vapor in the same planet's atmosphere. So, if there is water on the planet, does that mean it can sustain life? Not really. There's no proof that the planet can support life. Its size is too large. That could create difficulties. The planet's interior could have a large mantle of high-pressure ice, kind of like Neptune, or the ocean might be too hot to be habitable. The 2019 study mentions another problem.
The planet is located in a system more than 100 light years away, meaning that whatever image we try to get is the image of the planet 100 years ago. The light takes only 7 to 8 minutes to come from the Sun to the Earth, but 100 years to go to that planet. So for us to travel there is impossible.
Even so, this shouldn't dash hopes of futuristic planetary colonization for all the billionaires out there. This is probably not the last time signs of water have been found on a planet, but it certainly isn't the first. In 2014, scientists found evidence of water vapor on another exoplanet. It was roughly the size of Neptune and about 120 light years away from Earth. But the lack of a guarantee on prospects of life on another planet need not be seen as a disappointment. You see, these revelations are less about colonizing another planet, or finding a planet similar to Earth, or even finding fun aliens. They're simply a gateway to more insight on other planets in space.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. If you're curious about what aliens look like, do not worry. Mexico has them out on display for you. 2 mysterious non-human alien corpses were displayed at Mexico's first public congressional hearing on UFOs. In China, a real-life episode of The Crocodile Hunter is playing out. Dozens of crocodiles escaped from a breeding farm during the floods. And in Hawaii, the restive Kilauea volcano is roaring back to life. It erupted for the 3rd time this year, spewing lava. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1993, Israel and Palestine signed the first Oslo Accord. It was the first of a pair of agreements signed on the White House lawns. This was the first time Israel and Palestine recognized each other. The accords were the closest the two sides have come to resolving the conflict. Eventually, it ended up in failure. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.